Okay. Well, hello, everyone. I know we have some friends joining us today, but for those of you who do not know me, I am Roberta Mancuso, and I have the privilege of being the Associate Publisher of New England Home Connecticut Magazine. I would like to welcome you to today's final session of 3 for our To the Trade Only Market Day event, The Life and Legacy of Mario Buatta. I would first like to thank George Sneed and his team at Wakefield Design Center for our partnership. I would also like to recognize Beth Dempsey and her team from Images and Details for their role in helping us to bring nationally and internationally recognized design icons to our regional market. New England Home Connecticut and Wakefield Design Center have co-hosted this event for 8 years, twice a year, at the beautiful, inspiring showroom of Wakefield Design Center located in Stamford, Connecticut, where we have a full afternoon of sessions, networking, great snacks, and we close out with wine and champagne. Obviously, we're not going to be doing that today. Adapting to our current environment with new technology, this spring, we spaced out our event into 3 sessions, and we hope you were able to catch the previous 2 as well. The videos of all of our events are up on our website under News and then select Design Dialogue, and that is the New England Home Magazine website. No great event can go off without sponsor support, and I would like to acknowledge our sponsoring companies for this spring. Heidi Holzer and Design Decorative Work, The Linen Shop, Dean Distinctive Design and Cabinetry, L&M Cabinets and Rugs, L&M Carpets and Rugs, cabinets on the brain, and Digital Home Systems. Typically, all of our sponsors have the opportunity to say a few words during our in-person events, but given our new format, we have given 2 sponsors the opportunity to speak at each event. Today, you will hear from our final sponsor, Tom Manna of Digital Home Systems. So I'm going to turn this over to Tom right now.
Thanks, Roberta. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this wonderful world of quarantine. I'm sure we're all becoming very proficient at it. Technology. We're finding out how important it is, unfortunately, through this whole fiasco, for lack of a better term. Our company and companies like ours, we're known in the industry as integrators, have been deemed essential. So we've been operating through this 8-week period so far that we've been in this, maybe more, I don't know, it feels like a year. But we've been operating. Unfortunately, we're not doing much revenue in these days, but we are being asked by our clients to help them set up home offices, communications, get their networks right, help them with Zoom meetings, etc. So the good news is for us, technology has become essential in our world, and importantly to you guys out there. And by the way, Digital Home System is a company in Rybrook, New York. So for all of you in the area, come and visit our showroom, our experience center. For all you out of the area, just take what you can and leave the rest. Anyway, from an essential standpoint, we've been operating, and the smart home concept really has become much more important with all of this. And what I like to tell you is what smart home isn't. Smart home isn't a Nest, isn't Sonos, isn't a Ring. Those are all devices. What smart home and technology should do for you, the designer, and our clientele base is make life simpler, enhance life, and just be an asset. So instead of picking up your phone, demo this, and have one of a million icons on your phone, that's not a smart home. You still have to hunt and peck to do that. And especially in today's age, and for this group, design is important. This is a smart home. This is sleek. This is easy. But to bring it into focus for what we've been doing the last 2 months and how important we've become is this is a smart home. It's one very simple, easy panel or interface. And you can see here, if I lean this against my nose, very simple icons, not a bunch of icons on your phone. And just to do this real quickly, if I go and press this button here, and I hit that button, client can see their whole household, no matter where they are from a distance, that quickly. And we can go back to the home. And if I wanted to check on my temperature in the home and wanted to set it, if I was quarantined away from my main house, maybe in the country, and I want to check on my city residents, here we have it. We can change at a glance almost. And if I want to turn the lights on or listen to music, it's that simple. So that's what smart home technology can do. That's what it has done for our clients in this time of being locked up. And it also brings you entertainment at a touch of a finger. So we've been providing that, communications, all the work stuff, and also the fun stuff, the games, the videos, the movies. So I'll leave you with this. Because of this group, technology, I usually see eyes roll when I talk to architects and designers. They don't want to see anything. And I'll take a very different viewpoint from other people in my industry. Neither do we. We don't want to see one thing. And again, I'll leave you with this. The earlier you get the integrators, in this case, the digital home system, into the process, the less you will see. You will not see, if you make us an organic part of your project, you will not see technology, and your clients will love their environment. So have a great discussion, and I wish you all safe healthiness and luck, and hopefully we'll do this in person someday soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, that's Tom Manna from Digital Home Systems. Before I turn this over to George Sneed, who is the owner of Wakefield Design Center, I would like to point out the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to use that for questions, which will be answered at the conclusion of the presentation. George?
Hey, Roberta. Thank you. You know, this is our 8th year of our partnership with New England Home. I don't know, I personally almost like this format better than an actual live format. We can see each other closer, we can hear each other well. I don't know, I'm kind of excited about it. So I would like to thank New England Home, Kathy and Roberta, also Beth Dempsey, Images and Details from our perspective of pulling all of this together and coordinating it, in addition to being the moderator on our segment today. But before I introduce Emily Evans Eerdmans, I would like to say, for those of you who know me, number one, we're in Stamford, Connecticut. We're 12,000 square feet. We've been approved by the state of Connecticut to open under current guidelines. We would prefer you call and let us know you're coming, just so we can have the appropriate area of the showroom set up. But we have plenty of room for social distancing, and we have merchandise ready for instant delivery. But anyway, on a personal note, those of you who know me know that I'm not a very floral person. And you think of me as probably very clean and mid-century modern. I cut my teeth and got my start in the business working for Persnickety, which was a design-based firm out of Washington, D.C. In 4 words, they were known as English country floral chintz. That's how we described it. It was back in the day when, you know, English country and Mario Buatta was our idol. And one of my really good friends came to the house and actually said, if you put one more flower in your apartment, I'm going to have to take hay fever medication. So I hope that lets you know that I really do. I have an amazing appreciation for that genre, that era, and I lived through it. So I am really, really, really excited. This is as excited as I've been about a presentation. I mean, I've liked all of them, but I'm personally really looking forward to this. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Emily. Emily Evans Eerdmans is a design historian and founder of Eerdmans Fine Art, a fine and decorative arts gallery and consultancy in New York City. She's the author of several books, including monographs on Madeleine Castaing, Henri Samuel, and is the co-author of Mario Buatta, 50 Years of American Interior Decoration. A close friend of Buatta, Eerdmans has overseen the dispersal of his estate, including the recent blockbuster auction at Sotheby's. So I'd like to turn the meeting over now to Beth and Emily, and we're all really looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, George. Thanks, everybody. Well, I'm as excited as Emily is today about the discussion and everybody else. So, Emily Edinger, can we have the slides? So, in just a second, we'll start the slide part. But first, Emily, I'd love you to start and tell people, how did you meet Mario? I said, it kind of sounds like a date, you know. So tell me a little bit, you know, about your first encounter and how you met him.
Well, the very first encounter, which he would never have remembered, was I used to work for a dealer who exhibited at the Winter Antique Show, now known as the Winter Show. And as many of you probably remember, Mario was the chairman for many, many years and had sort of a reign of terror there. But I remember working the stand opening night, and this was the day people were still decked out in emeralds and taffeta for the opening night. It was so glamorous. And there was this man with a dollar bill on a string dragging it through the aisle. And you know, I didn't really know much about Mario Buatta at that time. This would have been, you know, in the
It's in the 80s.
Yeah, around 2000 or something.
Oh, you met him at that point. Okay.
I just moved to New York from my graduate studies in London, and took furniture very seriously, very academically. And then here's this crazy man, you know, and I think even Martha Stewart was trying to pick up the dollar bill. So that was my first time encountering this famous Mario Buatta. And then he wrote the foreword to the first book I ever wrote, which was for this gallery, Hyde Park Antiques. And then we got to know each other a little bit. And then several years later, Rizzoli suggested me as the writer for this book. And I've only written about dead people before, which after working with Mario, I think I'm going back to. Dead people are much better as subjects. But, you know, when they asked me, it was such an honor and a privilege to this living legend who had such a career and had never done a book to document it. And it was quite an experience being able to say, is this how it was? And he could say, no, that's totally wrong. Or yes, that's right. So to work, you know, to be able to work with your subject was a fabulous, if frustrating, experience at times.
Well, it's always dual. As I said, I think when we spoke before, on the current slide, you can just see a little bit of Mario and being a prankster. If you notice the rubber hand by his side from the stack of fabrics, that infamous rubber hand was something, one of the first things that I ever saw or knew of Mario. I worked for a PR firm and that was actually in the 80s. And he was our client at the time. And he would show up in the office back in the day with it was Hebe Dorsey, Nancy Reagan, Alice Mason, and there would be Mario coming in with like the, you know, ex-president's wife, and there he would be with this big rubber hand on the desk, you know, and coming around to all of the girls. And that's just, you know, he was just such a personality. And as being one of the most sort of iconic designers of the 20th century, what do you really think was the appeal? Like, what was it, you know, about Mario besides the person? So let's, you know, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I think if it's about his decorating style, which has its roots in the English country house style that John Fowler and Nancy Lancaster concocted or founded, I think he was about sort of joyous interiors. One of his true geniuses was with color. And I have to think people looking through Architectural Digest and seeing one of his projects where there are watermelon walls or robin's egg blue walls or chartreuse walls was a revelation. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think most people grow up with white or beige walls or, something kind of neutral, and to see that exuberance, and exuberant is such a great word to describe him in every single way, that from his personality and his joking to his version of the Colfax and Fowler style, he turned it up a notch, and it was very romantic. I think that spoke to a lot of people. There's something like stage setty, but in a very good way, about what he did. So I think those are two of the appeals, that it was joyous, romantic, an antidote. It was sort of an antidepressant, if you will.
And during that time, in so many, the breadth of his career, it just, it went on for many, many years. But I think, today when you talk about branding and what sort of makes somebody unique, he really became known as, George started to say in the beginning, the Prince of Chintz. So, and I, sort of depending on the age of the people or participants here, you look at it, and being labeled as something can be really a good thing. And then other times it can't be. So let's talk a little bit about that whole sort of genre of becoming the Prince of Chintz, and what, when we have a slide up here at the moment that, is a very, Mario signature look.
Yeah, well, I think in the words of Mama Rose, gotta have a gimmick, just like Sally Jesse Raphael with her red glasses, which she hated, by the way. Mario really understood the power of repetition and for being known for something in particular. And so, for example, this is his living room we're looking at right now, which he moved into in 1976. And when we were working in his apartment after his death and organizing it, I mean, everything was right in that position. And so how many years, 40 years later, or over 40 years later. And that is, I think, I think this is a kind of decorating we're going to get back to, or interior design we're going to get back to. Henri Samuel was very much like that too, that with your clients, you provide this foundation that you then layer on top of personal mementos and things that have meaning to you. And then, and it just gets richer and richer, as opposed to, oh, I'm bored, 5 years, let's gut it and do something completely different. I was just talking to an interior designer friend yesterday, and she was talking about how being at home and spending so much time with all of her things is making her only want to be surrounded by the things she loves the most and that are the highest quality. And she wants to pare down and just, it's sort of the Marie Kondo philosophy of everything sparking joy. And this whole fast fashion moment we've been living in, where, it's like it's maybe $20, and it looks great right now, but then in 6 months, you're going to get bored of it. I don't think people are that interested in getting that little. I think there's a shift in that we don't want that quick, we don't want to be trendy. Maybe we want to be more timeless and fashionable.
No, I think that's true. I think that people are, because of, as you say, the advent at the moment of people being in their homes, are sort of reevaluating so many different things. And just looking, there's two questions I have here, and just looking at this photo, one of which is all the dogs. Did he personally have a passion for dogs? and two, I noticed that, a signature thing that I've seen, that Mario, and I wonder if he's one of the earlier ones, the photograph, the paintings over the bookcases, which I noticed you also have one in the background as well in your own apartment. And that, that sort of whole look and feeling. So the repetition, as you say, dogs, are those things like for him? Were those collections? Was there something there, some story behind that?
Well, and I think he stole it from Sister Parish. He would call his rooms the undecorated look, or a collected interior. And so he very much saw his rooms as having collections on top of that, and which connects to the whole English country house style, where generate, hundreds of years of ancestors each bring their own things, and then the next generation lives with it and adds something to their own. And if you think of how we are in America, maybe we inherit a few things, but most of the time when we buy a house or move into a place, we have to furnish it from scratch. And so one of his point of view was, let's first go into your attic and try to reuse whatever we can reuse. And he was very thrifty, actually, that way. But then let's make it look as if it's been added to over time. And so, for example, he would say, oh, don't cover all the chairs in the same fabric, do that chair in a different fabric so it looks like it was put into a room a little bit later. So the dog paintings, if he had had a dog, it would have died in a week. He could not have taken care of a dog. And so he had a thing for, you can see these Cavalier Spaniels all the time, and it's sort of a twist on the ancestral portraits that you would see in an English country house. So he didn't inherit Van Dyck's or Romney's, and in a way, there's something very authentic about not putting fake ancestors on your wall, not going out and buying a whole bunch of dead people and putting them on. And so, in a way, the dogs took the place of the ancestral portraits. And some of these pictures are from the 18th century, most are from the 19th century. And if you look at the book, he famously said, he's like, oh, these are my family portraits. And he even did a family tree with different pictures representing different people in his family. So there really was a connection between that whole idea of the ancestral portraits and the dogs. The one that's in the middle, right over the sofa, oh no, never mind. That's wrong. That's incorrect. It's a different picture I was thinking of. But the upper right one is the very first dog painting he ever bought. And it's actually sort of ugly. But anyway, that's what kicked him off, was that one right there.
I think everybody finds that one thing, right?
Hmm.
Something that starts you on becoming a collector, and, obviously the term, these days is minimalism, maximalism, and he definitely, had maximalism, but I think it was through his own lens, as you were saying, right? He really, you can tell that's the sign I look at of a really good designer and decorator is, to be able to take such, a magnitude of something in a particular area, and then how they juxtapose, and as you say, layer it, and then you look at the blue and white collection, he definitely was collection upon collection upon collection.
He abhorred a blank space. I mean, you could really tell that he just, everything had to be filled. And he just loved pattern on pattern and highly decorated surfaces. So if you look at what he was collecting, from penwork to Delft, chinoiserie decorated pieces, you really see, even the floor of this room is faux painted to look like sisal. So even the floor wasn't a solid color. So he personally had a predilection for just wanting to have a cacophony of things and patterns and colors. And he found that very comforting. And this was something that we were sort of talking about the other day, that I also think this sort of Buatta mania we're going through right now is a reflection of what do we want from our homes when we come home? Do we want the hotel style of sort of Zen, sanctuary, calm, or do we want a cocoon that sort of stimulates us and is like a big duvet that we wrap ourselves around and comforts us and engages us, which is more of what a Mario interior does. And I think, especially since we're not out in the world, pounding the pavement and exhausted when we come home, and we're actually looking to stimulate and entertain ourselves at home, that this shift back to a Mario or a more traditional style interior makes sense to a lot of people, or is more interesting to a lot of people right now.
Yeah, I think it's very comforting. So I know in the next slide, I think is the infamous Nancy Lancaster, right?
Yes. So this is
to say about this room. So let's talk a little bit about why this yellow room became such a signature and has been like one of the most famous pictures that people always show when they show a Mario.
Yes, and the New York Times recently did a feature a few months ago about the most influential interiors of the 20th century, and this was one of them. So it wasn't just for Mario, but when he first saw a photograph of this in a book in the early 1960s, it completely changed the trajectory of where he wanted to go. When he was first looking for his first interior design job, he wanted to work for Billy Baldwin, and Billy Baldwin is a world away from this room right here. It's the color, it's glaze, it's the sort of rich egg yolk, but it was also the story behind the room. Nancy Lancaster moved into what she called her bed sit, or sort of studio bedroom, in the 50s after she had divorced, and she had lived in all these huge stately homes and brought all of these things from those houses into this room. And he would call it, he did call this room, as he would call his own rooms, a scrapbook of her life. And he loved how, she kept bringing things with her. And if you go to the next slide, this is Mario's apartment before the one that we were just looking at with the dog wall. And you can see that so many of the things in this room, including the curtains on the right-hand side of the screen, he brought with him through 3 or 4 apartments, and whatever he could reuse, he could and did and wanted to, so that everything is imbued with memory and nostalgia. And really, Mario said to me towards the end of his life, when he just had too much stuff, and I tried to get him to think about doing an auction before he died, because I think he would have had a lot of fun with it. And he said,
absolutely.
he said, Emily, you have Andrew, I have my things. And so it really, I don't know if that's a healthy attachment, probably not, but for him, these things had such meaning. They really did.
I think, it's very interesting that you say that, Emily, because I think today that's for a different generation, to understand what the, coming off of that sort of fast fashion mentality of really knowing that what it is to search and to find something, and that there's a meaning and that there's a story behind it. So wouldn't you say, he definitely was a romantic at heart, don't you think?
Oh, he was. And I think, his father was a band leader who had previously toured with Rudy Valley, and his mother was very beautiful. And he grew up going to those, 1930s, 40s movies. And I think he wanted life to be like that. He wanted it to be a Fred and Ginger movie. And he said explicitly that when he designed a room for a client, he wanted it to be a backdrop for their life, but in a glamorous one, a one that made them the Ginger or the Fred and their own life. And so that's a very romantic point of view. And his whole attitude of always wanting to joke and lighten up the mood, which I think was one of the reasons he had such a wonderful relationship with his clients, who often became very good friends and would work with him for decades, was, don't take it too seriously. And if they got, this, I'm sure a lot of designers who are listening right now know that you're almost a psychologist working with clients, and how it can sometimes get tense, or a client can get too attached to an idea that is going to kill the design, or something along those lines. And so how do you finesse it? And Mario just had such a light touch. He really, had a genius for that.
Yeah, no, brilliant. You just look, and some of the spaces are so incredibly timeless, and, there's just so many stories. And I think that when you go to, as we look at the past, I think a lot of people are doing that right now as they're in their own homes, is looking at the past to really, plan for their future. And in, the things about Mario also, I think, is that, he grew up during war times, numerous ones. So I think to the point of being able to look at those kinds of clients that he did over the time period, and to be able to have that lighter touch, or to be able to put together the sort of fantasy and story, was something that was really comforting to the clients. And their long-term, as you say, that's what makes like a really good design and a designer and the client relationship, you know, are those ones that continue. And I know for many people, he did numerous houses from them. And he went, as you said, would go through one as he went to the next house for them and take all of the things that he really thought were great, as opposed to completely starting from over again.
Yes, I mean, that was one of the wild things that I discovered, you know, when first working with him, was how frugal he was. And when he was working right up until his death, and his last clients were the Rosses, who had just taken this apartment in River House. And, you know, if you go into the book, you can see their previous apartment, and then the apartment before that, which was in the Sherry Netherland. And he only had, for those previous two apartments, he only had to add like 2 chairs to the living room. Everything else could be reused. So when they sold their previous apartment, the buyer bought everything. And Mrs. Ross told me, Mario was furious that he had to go out and buy everything new for this apartment, which would be most designers' dream, you know, like that you have to go shopping and go, you know, you can start from scratch and do something new. But he, you know, he really loved to reuse things, and he was very budget minded in his way.
Yeah. So he also had that saying about being right, you know, and in a Mario kind of way. What exactly does that mean? I know from people who have encountered him and worked with him that, you know, that was something that was important.
I think people he didn't finish school. He didn't finish college. He just did Parsons European Summer School. He didn't actually have a degree from a design school or even a certificate. But he had such an incredible understanding of architecture and proportion. I remember we were at this cocktail party of a very fancy socialite on Fifth Avenue, and he's in the corner and he's just tearing the room apart. And he's like, that lampshade is too small for that lamp. And like, he just couldn't help himself, that everything would jump out at him that wasn't right. And, you know, when he would come over to my apartment for dinner, you know, he just had it, you know, he just had this, this knack or this eye for knowing how a molding should be, how things should be scaled up and that kind of thing. So I think that's what it is, when it's, how do you know it's right? And you have to study architecture, classical architecture, and the orders and all of that and proportion, but then you have to internalize it so that you can go out into the wild, and you just know. And he just knew.
You know, I think people use the phrase today, that gut feeling, that really, you know, he knows what's right and what isn't, and it just spoke to him instinctually.
Absolutely. And I don't think people understand how much of the architecture he would do in his projects, that he would move walls, he would, you know, add so many moldings and specify exactly, you know, how high the molding should be or how thick. And you have to get the bones right. I mean, I think any designer would say that if you don't get the bones right, you're just throwing money away. So
well, look at the bedroom. Look at the molding alone in this bedroom. You know. Oh
yes, and I believe that is it's a mirror. It's mirrored actually with either an overlay of fretwork molding, or else it's faux painted, which is how he had it in his apartment. I don't know if you can see, there's sort of this fretwork detail on the large part of the frieze of the molding. And so, yeah, that would have been mirror backed. And I think that was something Sister Parrish did too. But this is the room that he was already very successful, but it was the room that Chauncey Howell, the news reporter for NBC, came and saw this 1984 Kipps Bay Show House. And when he saw this, he's like, Mario Buatta, the Prince of Chintz. And of course, Mario had a suit of chintz made up, you know, the next day. So he understood the power of that moniker and ran with it, you know. And you know, I wouldn't necessarily think of this room as a super chintzy room, because it is the palette is very restrained. But anyway, yeah, so he was proud to have that. And he said in this one interview magazine article that he really he really looked at what advertising companies would do, and that you would saturate the market with one thing. And so he was purposely very heavy-handed with his look, so that people knew what his look was. Yeah.
He was just, multi-talented, multifaceted. And I mean, you even look in here, so many little things like, and you can pull apart and get so many different design styles and things. You look at upholstered beds, like if you took the bed without the canopy and whatnot, would have a completely different feeling, that somebody else could do in another house, in 5 different layers. Like you can dissect the pieces. So I'd love to sort of move fast forward a little bit, because I think that for people, and to sort of understand the context of like not only the depth and breadth of what he was as a person and a designer, but really what he did for the industry. And so, as you just mentioned, the sort of Mario mania, after he passed, I mean, not only were you a long time friend and colleague and whatnot, but you had the monumental task of going through everything of his, and I'm amazed that you're still alive to talk about it.
Me too. I just got antibiotics. I think.
The borderline of anybody who has any understanding of who Mario was, and that like this is restrained to know the rest of the collections and everything else he had. And they, as you said, they were his things, they were his children.
Yeah.
And so to go through the estate, tell us a little bit about your process of what you did, cataloged, organized it. And because he was the collector, like how did you decide, and because you were with him for such a long period of time, did you have discussions about things at a certain point?
Well,
share what you can, or feel free.
Yeah, he was really, I mean, he was a shopaholic or a collectaholic. He probably bought something every day. And at the end, it was a little out of control. And he just couldn't part with anything. So at the end, there was his apartment, there was his Connecticut house, which was really a storage place for him. And it was just heaving with stuff. And then there were 5 storage units. And some, you couldn't even you could open the door 2 feet and then you have to wedge your body in because it was just so jam-packed. He's somebody who has a great deal of meaning to me personally, but then also I see him as an important figure in design history. So everything that we would come across, and he didn't throw away anything. I mean, there were garbage bags full of taxi receipts from the 1960s. And I would like, should I throw these away? Because maybe we can like recreate some trip he took, so I was so afraid to throw away anything. And yet we desperately there was so much to get through in a short period of time. So every day was exhausting because you had to make 1,000 decisions. And there are things that I'm not going to tell you what they are because it's too painful to talk about, but there are things that just the condition was not good enough and we let go of, and I still regret. But we've put together an incredible archive of his career from the 60s until the end of his days. I found so many amazing things that we just weren't able to look at when we worked on the book together. So Rizzoli and I are going to do a new book coming out in 2022, which I'm excited about. And Mario never wanted to, like, it's interesting what you say, what he did for the industry. And he wasn't really a mentor like Albert Hadley. He didn't really promote. I mean, if you worked for him, you were in tears and then you quit in a few days. He wasn't, unlike Albert Hadley, who if a project was published, he would insist that the junior or senior designer working on it had their name published in the article too. But he did show up to everything. And I bet a lot of people who are listening right now remember him coming to their showroom, sitting with them. And that was sort of how he supported the industry. He went to everything. And I thought he went to too many things at the end of it. But He really loved, he loved everybody in the industry.
He was really very much a people person. He was definitely a people person, and it was the connections. And that's, to your point, I mean, everybody does it their own way. And so I think that, in my encounters with him over the years, he definitely, was able to support people, but it had to be on his terms and his way, by all means. But I think he was definitely very encouraging to people.
So many stories of the very first day somebody opens up a shop, he's there. He's the first person at the door. So that, that's really wonderful to have Mario Buatta show up, your very first day. That makes you feel like, okay, I'm doing something right here. So he was very supportive in that way. And when I had this book signing party for Henri Samuel at Christie's, and Mario was not doing very well. He was living at an assisted living facility at that time, and he dragged himself down for it, and you could tell that he was not feeling very well, and he was just sort of huddled in a corner with his walker. But friends told me how they would go up and talk to him, and he would whip out one of his toupees and make a joke. And you could tell that he just he lived for that. He loved that, and he wanted to be there. And it meant so much to me that he would make that huge effort.
He's a true and a loyal friend. He was also, as you said, he was a comedian at heart. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes.
So a little bit, because of let's just talk a little bit more about the auction, because I think people were just fascinated. Did you have any idea that it would have gone the way that it did?
Well, I thought it should have gone better.
Okay.
I'm never happy. I'm like Mario.
Okay. So the first one was 2 days, and I think how much was 7.6 million I read?
Yes.
Pieces were in it. There was
it was, in the negotiating of which auction house we were going to go with, I had a very clear vision from the first, and one of the number one goals I had was that at least 1,000 pieces were taken, because the collection was so massive, but also to communicate his just sort of what a maximalist he was, how voracious he was, that we needed to show that, we couldn't just cherry pick down to a couple hundred lots. We had to show this if you look at his book, it's 5,000 pages, and, you get a hernia from carrying it. He was all about more is more is more. And so I knew the sale had to be that way. And I had a very clear image that we needed to recreate his apartment as much as we could. And Sotheby's was just terrific. And they brought in Russ Jenkins, who's an incredible exhibition designer, who did the Bunny Mellon exhibition as well. So they were terrific to work with. But I think, it was a very intense experience. But and everybody at Sotheby's said probably, one of the biggest, most interesting, eccentric sales they've ever worked on in their career. But I couldn't believe the reaction it got. If anybody visited the exhibition, you'll remember there was that huge mural with the cutout figure of Mario. And from the beginning, I had a vision of that being a place where people could come and take their pictures and have an Instagram moment. And so, this is one of the first Instagram era sales, but it just took off in a way that I never would have thought. And Sotheby's kept saying they couldn't believe how many young people were walking through the rooms. Not everybody is 40 and up. So that was really cool. And I think I have theories about that one, and I'm curious to hear what everybody listening has to say about it. But I think as we're in this Instagram era, and we're all presenting ourselves on our Instagram page, we're all becoming personal brands, we're aware that the environment that surrounds us is an extension of our personality. And so a hotel room kind of style doesn't really communicate anything, but to have something like what Mario did, which is so personal and idiosyncratic, I think I think this younger generation likes that, and is embracing that.
No, I think it's definitely, there was multi-layers to the sale. And the kind of people, were people buying entire collections of things? Did you find it was that the kinds of people, do you have any idea? Did Sotheby's share anything with you with were people buying entire lots?
Well, they didn't share. No, they are not allowed to share that information. But some people would have communicated with me directly, and so yeah, there were a few people. I mean, the dog pictures have all, like the wall of dog paintings has all gone all over the world, and yeah, no. So yeah, I think, but I would say most people didn't just buy one thing from the auction. If they were bidding, they got a few things. But yeah, it was
A piece of Mario. Do you think that's what it was? What do you think that really, propelled a piece of history, a piece of his personality, the designs? Do you think that's what people wanted?
I think the name for sure, but I will also say that everything he chose had a little something special about it. It just had a little twist to it, or it was a little prettier than usual. And so there was something about his eye that was, he really did have a terrific eye. And so I think it's compounded by buying a piece of design history, and it was an epic sale. I think it's something, the catalogs are going to be collected. And so to have something from that moment,
Yep,
means something to people. But I think the objects themselves, I think it was Richard Michon on his Instagram, he finally unpacked this little Delft butter holder that he bought, and he's like, oh, it's so much prettier than I remembered. I'm enjoying it so much more than I realized. And I think when people bring these things home into their own, and it's just one piece of Mario instead of 1,000 pieces like at Sotheby's, they're going to be surprised and so happy at how pretty it really is on its own.
yeah. No, to your point, the Instagram thing, I think I just saw the other day, the Madcap Cottage Boys, Jason and John, just got pieces, and they're like kids in a candy store opening up the Mario pieces and showing the video of all of them. So I think, to your point, I think that there is going to be, this return of pieces having meaning really behind them and
Reality.
in your home. So before we open up, we have some questions here. Do you have a favorite Mario memento?
Oh my God. I maybe have a few. One that has so much meaning to me is this picture of Mario that was drawn by Constantine Kakanias, of Mario in his bed. And Constantine did it for the New York Times for the story on beds. It was, I think it was the last lot in the Sotheby's sale. I wasn't allowed to bid at Sotheby's because I was so involved, but somebody, this wonderful woman, Luzanne Oddie, knew that I liked it, and she bought it and gave it to me as a gift. And I have it hanging on the matching bookcase that you can't see behind me. So I look at it every single day. And Mario loved that bed and lived in that bed. That was kind of his personal, his main space in his apartment that he lived. And it's just, it shows him, I wish I had a slide of it, just shows him surrounded by fabric samples and books and just a cocoon within the cocoon. And so I treasure it so much.
Yeah, you're so lucky, the idea that you got to be able to spend so much time with him and really understand him. Is there anything that you really would like else to say that you want people to know about him that they may not, or that you'd like to share before we open it up for questions?
I think what I hope everybody takes away with them is the joy that he tried to create with his work. He wanted people to be happy. He wanted people to feel glamorous. And I think that's been sort of out of fashion for a while, but to me, that sounds pretty damn good. And I would say that's something I hope people embrace. And one other thing is, he always tried to make us laugh. And this time right now would have been so tough for him because he was such a people person, but he would have been on the phone 10 hours out of the day, calling all his girlfriends, gossiping, joking. And that's a lesson. I'm naturally a reclusive person, so I find it hard I don't pick up the phone as often as I should, but that's a big lesson he taught me about friendship, is reaching out to people and picking up the phone. So hopefully all of you will pick up the phone today and just call in and have a gossip with somebody, and think about him.
So, okay, so we have some questions. You ready to, let's see.
Ooh.
Yeah. I've got questions and I've got some chat comments. And let's see. Great job, Emily team. Any chance there will be a future retrospective of Mario that could be mounted? The auction certainly was a nod to this. I'm thinking sort of a Dorothy Draper-esque at the museum at the City of New York or elsewhere.
Well, my hope is that these enormous archives that we've compiled make their way to an institution, possibly the New York School of Interior Design, where they have a materials atelier named after him. And it would be wonderful to sort of celebrate that moment of the archives going there with an exhibition. So I definitely hope that happens.
Okay, let's see what else I have here. Oh, somebody wanted to know what the saying is on the green needlepoint pillow.
Where?
I don't, you know what? It just came in. So it's probably on one of the earlier slides, which we can, Emily and I can go back through. So once we find that slide, I'll let you know whoever our steamer is that sent us. We can answer that. We'll answer back. So another question is, what do you think the future of antiques are? Are they going to make a comeback as they should?
Well, I will say, if you look at his collection, he didn't have a lot of brown wood. Almost everything was painted. And I do think like the brown wood of antiques we're not going to see, so I don't think we're going to see so much of that. But I do think, I do think we're going to see people are feeling more comfortable buying at auction. Hopefully they will go to dealers as well. But yeah, I think the whole idea that we don't want something cookie cutter that you're going to see in everybody else's apartment. Where else are you going to find that but with antiques, really? So yeah, I do think antiques are going to come back. And right now is an amazing time to buy, and often they're much less expensive than a new reproduction piece. And they have a lot more resale value too, so it's a better investment.
Okay, I think, I'm trying to think, I'm going through, I'm looking to see on these. Sorry, it just takes a second to read them. We've answered a lot of them. Lettuceware. What was tell me personally, I'm like, what is it that?
I know, you're obsessed with that. Well, for him, every room, he wanted to turn every room into an indoor garden. So the colors that he would use were all sort of the clear colors of flowers and foliage. And so if you look at the porcelain collection he had, a lot of it was either decorated with botanical specimens or in the form of cabbages or tulips. Mm-hmm. So the lettuceware is just an extension of that.
Okay, gotcha, thanks. So this was great, Emily. Thank you so much. We really thoroughly enjoyed having you today to share the life and legacy of Mario Buatta. And I hope everybody takes a little bit more comfort in their homes today as they're spending more time at home, and realize it's okay to have things around you and they can be your friends. And, at some point you just need to learn to know when to stop. I think that's probably
that's right.
There is a stopping point at some point. And everybody who's been part of our journey in this virtual to the trade day, thanks for tuning in. We will keep you posted of other events and activities that we have going on. So be safe, go out there, shop, support your people, and keep designing, guys. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Hi, everyone. Just want to say thank you for joining us from New England Home. And I think maybe George is going to pop up in a second. There he is.
Hi. Wow, that was fascinating. And to Beth's point, back in the day in the 80s, I had someone who said often that it was impossible to over-decorate. I think we might have found the exception to that rule. But it was as expected, just breathtaking. What an experience you must have had pulling that together. And I just would like to thank everyone who's joined us for all three, who just tuned in today. And as Roberta said, they are all available on the New England Home Archive. Thank you so much. Can't wait to see you in the showroom. And we're looking forward to expanding our new format.